Thank you.
We're recording in progress. Yes. So how is everyone doing? How's everyone doing on their progress?
Making progress.
I see a jacket. It looks like a jacket. Good job.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. I'm glad I've had this practice run. I've done a 12, obviously, but then this is more of a practice run, this pink one, before I do my velvet one, because I did come across a few things that I thought, oh, next time I need to be a bit more aware of that. And so, yeah, as you were just saying, it's like basically another muslin in a sense.
Yeah. So, that's okay. Sometimes there's a thing called a wearable muslin.
Yeah, exactly. I hope to be able to at least wear it in the summer or something.
Yeah. So this is, because when I made the jacket for this lesson, it does not fit me. I just chose a size 12 just to have an example. So a young friend of mine got a jacket. She was delighted. So then I needed to make one of my size. And there were just a few little, I can still wear it, but there was a few like, I think I'm going to do this a little differently next time. So the third, it's this weird thing. It's like the third one is the charm.
Good.
So, because my teacher, Simone, used to say, excuse me, you should get it in the first shot. Well, no. She's the only person that ever said that. Everyone else I know, people whose abilities I respect, generally say it's the third one is where it really, everything kind of solidifies and you figure out your riff on and know how everything is going to work. So, yeah. So, if you make the first one or the second one and you're not entirely happy with it, don't despair.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I plan on making a wearable muslin myself.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Because see, you may know if there are issues with it, but you don't point them out to anyone. You just say, "Oh, I made this," and they're all just astonished at how brilliant you are. So yes. Because what gets me sometimes is even now, my students, I'll wear something in and they'll say, like, "You made that, professor?" And it's like, kids, do you know what I do when I'm not here? Actually, one day the head of the program came in, and she's relatively new. And I was wearing a pair of my jeans, and she said, "Oh my God, you made those?" And I said, "Let's go into your office. You have no idea what I do when I'm not here." And I made her pull my website up on her computer. And I said, "This is what I do when I'm not here." So yes, these jeans are easy. So it's, so people think you're brilliant. Okay, other questions, other comments? Anyone else want to do some show and tell before we begin? Crickets.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I got behind because I got really focused on trying to get that raglan coat almost done.
Okay.
And last night I drafted out all the pieces
for
the pattern. And why did I think for some reason you said for all the inner seam allowances they should be 3/4 of an inch to allow for the Hong Kong? No. So
no. The vertical seams for the jacket, the seam that joins the front to the side to the back, and center back, those should be 7/8 total.
Okay. I knew it wasn't 5/8. I thought this is something's not right.
Yeah, because I like a 7/8 or even an inch, because I like to have a little wider seam allowance for a Hong Kong binding. I just think it looks better.
Okay.
Okay, so other questions? Okay, so what we're doing today, we're installing the welt lining unit into the garment. That's going to be our lesson for today. We have 3 more classes, so this is one of the 3 final videos. So as usual, don't be shy about asking questions, and I'm going to share the screen. And so if we have no other questions, let us just start and get to work. Okay. This is where we're going to end up at the end of this lesson. As you can see, the facing is installed. We will have our hems and the facing finished down here. We will also have everything secured up at the neck. We've built in a nice roll line, as you can see. So, as you can well imagine, there's a lot of work here, so let's get busy. So this is where we begin. We have the body. We have the facing. Now on the body, I'm going to show you, I've worked ahead and I have sewn the shoulder seams. And on the inside, what I have done, as you can see here, is I trimmed down the seam allowances of the center back seam and tacked those seam allowances down. And I tacked the seam allowances of the collar up towards the canvas. So this is what you would want to do before you start installing the facing. So the next step is going to be, as you might guess, pinning the right sides of the facing to the body. So I will pin that off camera and bring you back the results. So as you can see, I'm still pinning. So with this, you're going to be lining up all the cut edges. The object being that we're going to use the cut edge of the canvas as the stitching line. So if you remember, we favored the lapel out, so it's going to be a little larger, so you want that on the bottom so that when we sew everything together, it will favor nicely towards the back. And then coming down to here, again, match up these. Actually, could I ask whoever has their microphone on to turn it off, please? Thank you. Edges. So when we get down to the bottom here, something you want to look at. Okay, let me just zoom in here.
That's there. Yeah.
Yeah, just a moment here. Let's see, who has their microphone on? Just, well, anyway, moving right along. Okay, you can see, I'm sorry. You can see it. And if you remember, we dropped this down a tiny bit, like 1/4 of an inch. And you can see here, that's where the seam allowance is. So what you want to do is hike that up. Because once I hike it up and pin it, I'm going to flip the fabric over to show you what you look for from the other side. Because that little 1/4 of an inch, the magic 1/4 of an inch that I talk about in the pattern making, this is where that makes its appearance. And not having it is going to make the garment buckle right at this point. So let me just pin this. I'm going to draw out this over. So what you're going to look for here, lay this flat. Line everything up. You're going to get a little tiny bit of slack here. Just a tiny bit, just like 1/4 of an inch. So that little tiny 1/4 of an inch is going to keep this garment from collapsing under when you finish it. Now, I'm going to over here because I have worked ahead, as you can see. I like to thread based. Go ahead.
I have one question.
Yes.
For the clarification, you want us to leave that ease as is, just pin it and just leave it.
Right, because see, the thing is having that little extra, that magic 1/4 of an inch. This is something I learned years ago. If you cut everything 1-to-1, when you turn it, press it, favor it, do all that you need to do, what's going to happen is the facing is going to drag the outer layer under, so the jacket will curl slightly in. So having that little extra slack, that little extra 1/4 of an inch, if you don't need it, it's not going to kill you. But generally, you do need it. And so having it be a little bit ripply as you lay it flat on the table is what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
So other questions? Okay. I thread based with the same color as what's in the machine, and I'm going to talk about heresy here. I leave it in. I'm too lazy to rip it out. So if you notice, this is about 1/8 of an inch from your cut edge. So this stitching line is going to follow the cut edge of the canvas. So now that I have pinned this side, I'm going to go back here and thread based. So I will thread based all the way down to the end, and I will meet you back here. I'm coming up on to the end of my basting. And some people would just pin this. I'm a little bit too nervous. I like to baste this. There's sometimes you can pin, other times you can baste. Now, let me just zero in here a little bit. So what I have done here is right there, at the end of the facing, I've marked this end and I've marked the stitching line over to the fold line. I took out the thread tracing because I don't want to stitch through it when I go to the machine. So that is what we're looking at here. This is the hem. And that chalk line is going to give me something to use to guide my stitching here. So and there we are. We're at the end of the facing. Now, what I will do, let me just show you the results here. And then, so there, that is where the facing ends. The chalk line will be the stitching line, which will then blend in right to cutting where the cut edge is. So now I'm going to turn this over and bring it back and show you what I've finished. So this is the facing basted in place, and you can see there's that 1/4 of an inch right there. I like to check this before I go to the machine because then I don't want to rip this out later. Now, I will go to the machine and I will see you there. Now, at the machine, you can see that I have put on the generic adjustable zipper foot. Now notice I'm going to adjust this foot just so the needle is sitting ever so slightly inside that notch. So you want the cut edge of the canvas to run along the foot. So to begin the stitching, we're going to start right there. And this is a standard 2.5 stitch. No mystery about that. Just tilt this down. There. It's garbage day in New York City. And so you can see here, I'm using the cut edge of the canvas as my stitching guide. So this will go all the way up and around, and I will sew all of this off camera and bring you back the results. Okay, coming to the end. And again, this is going to look familiar because we started this way, we're ending the same way. Back tag. Okay, now let me take the work out of the machine. And let's draw out, turn around, and show you our results. So really, what we have accomplished here is to sew right next to the cut edge. So now that we've sewn, the next step is the pressing table. So you just want to press as sewn. So and then one thing I like to do on the center back, if you remember, we stretched these edges. So you just want to give it another little bit of a stretch so that this collar edge will sit nicely on the shoulder. So from here, we go back to the work table. So we're at the work table, and you can see here that I have worked ahead. So now let me just zoom in and explain what I have done. We're grading. So now the general rule with grading is that the public side, which on the lapel would be this side, that gets the wider of the seam allowances. The private side, which is the underside of the lapel, gets the narrower. So I have graded above the break, I have graded the seam allowances on the body lapel piece to 1/8 of an inch. I have this yet to do. But since the body is going to be public and the facing will be underneath, on the body side, we retain the width of the lapels and we trim the facing down to 1/8 of an inch. So you can see how things change at the break line. And you can see here, I need to do a little clipping here. You're going to stagger your clips, but you also want to clip the inside curve here. So I'm going to continue on with the grading. And I will meet you back here with the finished piece. Okay, almost done. Here we are. So we have all of our grading done. Our next step is the pressing table. Now we're going to be working in stages. And as you can see, we're going to be pressing part of this over the ham. I'm going to press the lapel first and resolve the body pieces later. So that's going to look like all of the seam allowances go towards the body. So I'm going to just start by pressing this is why it's more convenient to have a ham. Okay, we're coming up on the end of the facing lapel. And press it over the ham. So I'm not going all the way down into the curve just yet. So I'm going to work backwards to here. And let me see if I can press that down just a little bit. Okay. So now this is where we want to tack the seam allowances to the canvas. And this is just a catch stitch. And you're just going to catch the canvas and the seam allowance. This is going to function in place of edge stitching. So it will hold all the seam allowances towards the body, which is what you want. And you don't have any edge stitching visible. As you can see, the needle takes 2 bites in one pass. You catch the canvas, you catch the seam allowance. I call this my catch stitching. You could use a regular classic catch stitch, but this takes quite a lot less time. So now I'm going to work all the way across, and I will bring back the results. Okay, headed up almost to the end. So I'm going to stop here, secure the thread. Now from here, what we want to do is take the work off the ham, and we want to put it onto the heel of the sleeve board to finish up pressing. So I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions. Are we all good? Okay, then. These seam allowances towards the body. Because once we press these towards the body, we can understitch those. And then we can start turning this right side out. So I will understitch the rest. I will finish the other end, and I will meet you back here. Okay, then. We have the seam allowances tacked down. Now, let's take this off of the sleeve board. So, as you can see, everything here tacked towards the canvas. So at this point, what we can do is turn this right side out. Now, what I like to do is I like to turn and press the lapel and get that situated, and then we'll deal with what's below the lapel. But what's beautiful about this, now you notice, see how that seam allowance automatically favors and pulls towards the back? That is what we want. So now, pressing. This is where you're going to love your sleeve board. I'm just going to turn that for now. And so what I like to do is position it so that the roll line is on the edge and steam. Now, steaming, you can take your clapper or your wood block and press that. Now you can do this 2 or 3 times if you wish, or if you really, really want a nice sharp crease, you could put the iron on it. Let's just put the iron on it. Well, I'll show you what it looks like here. That's what you want. And if you want a little harder crease, you can just come in here. Let that cool. And again, is that not beautiful? So I'm going to let that cool for a moment, because before we move this, we want to do some basting. The work is now cooled, and so you want to baste with the tailor baste these layers all together. It's just going to make your life much easier as we finish this jacket. So you notice here that I'm working up to the center back. Then I will stop. I will press the other side off camera, the same way we pressed this, and I will bring back the work with the basting intact. Okay. So the lapels are basted. Just give you a little taste of what I've created here. There is part of the work. So now I want to press the lower half, and that's pretty straightforward, really. Put it on the sleeve board, and you want to favor this back towards the facing. So that's a steaming, a little manipulation, and the clapper. I was going to say the chopping block, but that's something else. And so then we work down and around. So then this here is where the pressing ham comes back. So we're going to bring this like so. And then I'm going to press, oops, sorry. We're going to press this around the ham. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to get some more basting threads so I can baste all of these together. So starting up here, we want to baste through all of the layers, body and facing. Some people try to get away without basting. Don't do that. you're going to get something that looks like an unmade bed if you don't. So just don't try to skimp on the basting. Just don't. Okay. So now I will go off camera and finish the other one and bring you back the results. So I'm going to stop it again here and check in. Do we have any questions so far? Okay, then. So here we have the facing all situated, but there's one area that we really want to press before we go back to the work table. So you can see here, I have all of the layers smoothed back towards the armholes. And now what I want to do is I want to make sure that this edge here is a 1/2 inch over there. And let's see, zoom in, there we go. Okay, because I want to put the pressing ham. We want to reinforce the roll. There we are. I want to reinforce this roll here. So once you have it so that the collar is in the proper position, lots of steam, you can press it a little bit. And then when you feel it's nice and cool, it needs to slide down just a bit more. There we go. When you let it cool, then you can remove this. Now, what you're feeling for in this area, there we are. You want there to be no extra creeping up over. You want this facing to fall completely over the canvas. So I'm going to get some pins here. Pin it.
Yeah.
Pin it. There we go. Because our next step is going to be back at the work table where we sew the seam allowances of the collar and facing to the body. So here we are back at the work table. And just to orient you here, this is the neck seam, one end of the neck seam and the other. So what I want to do to make sure that all of these layers along the upper collar stay secure is I'm going to flip the lining back. Oh, there we are. And see, this is where we can just come in here by hand. And so I'm going to be sewing with blue thread. And really, it's just a running stitch. So we're just sewing the seam allowances together. And if you get a little mismatch down here, don't sweat that. Because this then will make the collar pieces stay exactly where you want them. And you won't see this from the front. So we're almost over at the end. Got a little bit further to go. Okay. At the end, and then we can secure the thread. And so then what that does, that secures this collar, so we can take the pins out. So we will have built in the turn of cloth on the collar, and you can see here, it doesn't pull open, which is what you want. Let me change camera angles and I'll show you what we've accomplished. So our facing is almost done. We have everything finished except this portion of the hem and this here. That is going to be our final hand finishing. Now you can tell by the absence of basting that I have already started hemming and we're sewing with a blind stitch. So I'm right about here. So let me just zero in on that so you can see. So this is really blind stitch. I like to finish hemming the body first, and then we'll resolve the facing. And as before, you notice I'm working slightly behind the fold. That is what you want to do so that it won't create any visible ridges when you are hemming and after you're finished. So now let me just open this out a little bit because we're going to hem all the way over to here. So I will hem all the way over to here and come back and show you my results. So let me secure the stitch. Remove the pin. Remove the thread tracing. So the entire hem is sewn up. Now here, we just smooth all of the facing down to there. And one thing I'm going to do here is make a little clip so that doesn't peek out past the edge. And then I'm going to sew the bias strip on the facing to the hem allowance. This is just a little slip stitch. And so it doesn't take much to do because that hem allowance is not very wide. And then secure the thread. Okay. With that. And let me sort everything out here. Now, before we take this over to the table for the finishing, one thing I like to do is just make sure everything smooths back. Because you want this completely smooth over the canvas. So I'm going to smooth it back. Especially up in this area. You don't want to lose any turn of cloth if you can avoid it. So this is all nice and smooth over the canvas. So now that I have that smooth, let me just do this one too while I'm pinning. Actually, I can pin that from this side. Doesn't matter which side you pin it from, just as long as you do it. Because the object here is you don't want to lose any of the facing width along here. So just going to smooth all of this. This may seem tedious and overly persnickety, but really. Okay, so now that that is accomplished, I'm going to come in here and I have my thread basting already prepared. I'm going to thread baste another row right in here. I know you're thinking, why all this thread? There's so much to take out later, but yes, this is going to make your life easier until everything is together. Once it's together, then you'll be darn glad that you actually used all this thread basting. So you can go up to just about here. You don't have to go all the way up because you're going to have a shoulder pad in here at some point. But if you go too far, it's not going to kill you. You can just take it out when you put the shoulder pads in. So that is what we want to do. I will go off camera and sew the other side and then meet you back at the work table. So here we are back from basting, and I basted on this side for this one, doesn't really matter. So what you can see here is we have our facing completely finished. We have finished the facing, we finished all the hem allowances, we finished the back neck. And so really, let's just enjoy this for a moment. The next lesson is going to be installing the sleeves. Okay, questions?
Yes, I have a question about the back neck.
Yes.
When you were hand stitching,
Yes.
how many layers you went through the lining layer and the neck layer? Was that just two, or was there three layers of fabric in there?
Just two, because if you remember, there were the two seam allowances on the neck seam of the body. We pressed the seam allowance of the collar up towards the collar and tacked that out of the way.
Right, right.
When we sewed the neck seam on the facing joining to the lining, we did the same thing. We pressed those open. So the lining seam allowance is facing the hem. The body seam allowance on the neck is facing the hem. So those are the two that you sew together.
So two layers. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Other questions? Are your brains full? I can tell. But this is the only lesson for today, because I figured this is plenty. This is going to give you plenty to work with. Yes.
This is loads.
Oh, well, but you know, this, and you see what's so funny is, yeah, I know people who say, well, how hard can it be? Like, you have no idea. Because it's an online jacket. You could just toss that off in a day. Well, yes, I could, because I've been doing this for a good long time. I tell my students that at FIT, because see, there's always that one student or two students that like puts off doing their homework every week until like a week or so before the midterm or the final. And I say to them, I could crank this out in a weekend. You couldn't, because I know how to do this. I've done this for a long, 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 long time. I figure I've been sewing 61 years, which makes me feel really old, but okay. But so anyway, so this week, this is I think a good a little, a good little bite. Now I've got to show everyone that didn't see it, because this book that I'm working on, I'm trying to work ahead as much as possible. And so the part of the story, Lola, she was a showgirl, and she ends up getting a new wardrobe at the Kennedy King studio. Well, Bella, if you remember, Bella was the victim of a blackmail attempt during the COVID. Well, she has written a book about it that yes. And so she's getting the cover of Vanity Fair. And so I had to have the title of the book before I could do the 2-page spread in Vanity Fair. So that was, I mean, this is the fun part of all of this. I had to figure out, okay, what's the book going to be called? Because I had the photo. And so now that I have the photo of the book, I can then do the big 2-page spread in Vanity Fair. So Lola, because Bella is going to be doing a book tour. And so Lola she's hiring Lola to be her media person. And that's how Lola's going to get back into her new life. This is going to be her new career. So she's gone from, losing her way and being in reduced circumstances to a new wardrobe and a new life. That's kind of the arc of the story. So, and what's so funny is I was talking to my friend Jackie, and what's not in this iteration of the Vanity Fair cover is, because they always have like other little text. And so below the, Bella's back, I have this little line, extra, Uggs, aptly named, you decide. So yes, yes, I'm having quite a lot of fun. Oh, and you have to see the little dress.
Can would there be an accompanying ebook or audio book?
I don't think so. See,
Okay.
Because this is really a sewing book.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it.
And so
I never played sew for my Barbie, so I'm so looking forward to. Oh, that is so cute.
with the little invisible zipper.
Oh.
I know
Is
she's
it,
got
is it
that.
a bone, is it a bone bodice?
No, they're plastic. They don't need bone bodices. But but see, one of the little sections is going to be muslins, because we have the fitter, and the doll I'm working with is an Eleanor Roosevelt doll. So she has a curvy figure. And so, I talk about, the patterns that we're showing are for a specific figure, but that doesn't mean you can't change them depending on the figure you're working with. So I have 3 different muslins, because it took me 3 muslins to get this. And
Wow.
yeah, well, or whether it's big or tiny, it's kind of the same. And it's, we were talking earlier, I say there's a weird thing about 3. It's like the third go is when it really solidifies. So, so yeah, Nia, I one thing that, because if you saw it on Instagram, there was video, there were little videos as well. And at some point I had someone say there should be like a website where you just kind of continue this story, because there's photos and then there's video. And, I said, if you know someone who's willing to throw a bunch of money at me to do that, all good for me. Yeah.
Are you
But
going to do any hats?
what's that?
Are you going to do any hats?
Not for these girls. No, clothes is enough. Trust me, because there is, oh my God, and last weekend, I didn't really realize how many patterns I have, because I was sort of freaking out, because I do this thing where I make it and I put it away and I'm not sentimentally attached to it and I don't think about it. Like when we had the archive, on for Threads magazine came online, I had it in my mind that I'd written like 3 articles. And Susan was like, "Are you kidding me?" And, I put my name in, and it was like there was like 20 articles. Like, then I would scroll through. Oh yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, I remember that one too. But and so it's the same thing with these clothes. I've been making these clothes for a good long time, and So I started copying them all. It took me all weekend to copy. I think I came up with 16, 17 outfits. So that was my job last weekend. And so on Monday, I went over to the Kinko's with the big scanner. So I had them all scanned because I'm trying to work because I don't have my meeting with this gal until Tuesday. And I'm like, because I sent her an email like, come on, lady, it's June 1st is the deadline. Come on, come on. So I'm trying to get as far ahead as I can before we get going on Tuesday. So it's going to be a fun project. And I tell my kids, like, I'm getting paid to do this. I get paid to do this. And what's kind of funny is the photo on the cover of the book, and actually the photo on Vanity Fair. These are photos that already exist. I don't have to go back and take these. I can just go into my archive and pull all of this. And because there are going to be plenty of photographs, trust me. But it's nice to be able to kind of go back and pull work that I've done over the last few years to get this going. So it's going to be a fun project. So other questions, comments, thoughts, hopes, fears, dreams, desires? if there are no other questions, I will turn off the recording and